Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Domenici and Dr. Rivlin, just got a promotion here. So first of all, let me say I share your concern. The fact that this nation is heading toward a fiscal train wreck, it's the only reason I stepped up the plate and ran for Senate. Otherwise, I'd be perfectly content back in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, running a plastics plant. So I also share your disappointment in terms of the lack of presidential leadership here. I mean, I find it baffling. When you run for president, you run to lead the nation, and the fact that we don't have that leadership is sorely disappointing. I think the #1 component to the solution here really is economic growth. And I want to first concentrate a little bit on that. I want to talk a little bit in terms of the current CR. From my standpoint, one of the ways you get economic growth is to restore confidence. And the fact that we're still toying around with funding this fiscal year's budget is just amazing to me. So the House has proposed a $61 billion cut to real spending. I believe that would be a real confidence boost, and I just kind of like to get your comment on what's happening currently between the House and the Senate, and would you agree with me that if we just get a $61 billion cut passed, that would increase confidence and let us move on and start actually talking about the 2012 budget?
Well, you're looking at me and haven't said who you're sending the question to, but I'll answer.
Both, I'd like.
I think you could read between the lines what I said in my testimony. And I believe confidence building is an important aspect of how we get out of the turmoil of the lack of economic growth. However, I regrettably don't think the $60 billion has much to do with the 10-year plan that I think we have to get done. Now, that's just my opinion. If you can get 60 billion out of it, it's 60 billion you don't have to get later. But in terms of confidence building, I think it's not a winner. It's just getting out of a mess. And I acknowledge that the way we're doing this is not very good government, not very good business. We ought to surely be ashamed and get out of it and get on with some better way to solve the debt, the budget that's behind us. People can't understand. There's not a confidence building because they don't know what we're talking about. And you see the newsman talking about the $60 billion. People don't know that it's not next year's budget. We haven't got to that yet. It's this year's budget. How do you get $60 billion out of this year's budget and call it confidence building? It's just kind of doing something you have to do. So I regret to tell you I don't agree. I wish I could.
I don't agree either. I think $61 billion is too much to take out of a year that is half over, and that the real confidence builder would be to get on with it, compromise somehow. It's got to be bipartisan. It's got to be signed by the president, and compromise and get past it. And get on to the real issues. The real confidence builder would be to solve the long-run problem, putting in place a multi-year plan that takes account of all of the parts of the budget that need to go into getting us back on a fiscally responsible track.
Okay. One of the, in terms of your solutions, in terms of getting economic growth, was a temporary payroll tax holiday. My concern with any kind of temporary tax decreases is, I think the history proves those are generally just saved versus a long-term solution. I just kind of like your comments on that.
Well, let me say 2 months ago or 2.5 months ago or 3 when we were discussing this, this seemed like the best thing we could possibly advocate. I only wish they would have done it 5 or 6 months ago. That is the tax holiday for payroll tax. I think it probably, of all the stimulus packages we've been thinking about, would have probably got us out of the doldrums, and we'd be moving it. It'd add 1 or 2, maybe 2.5%, take that much out of the unemployment. I'm quite sure that this is such an extraordinary temporary tax that it would not continue on. We are suggesting that the only reason we can do it in our package is because we have a new tax to pay into the Social Security tax, or we couldn't do it. In other words, we are certain that we are not robbing the Social Security Trust Fund, because in our new tax, we take the money out. If you can't do that, then you shouldn't do this stimulus package, because it should be paid for in the next 5 or 6 years with taxes that have been imposed to pay for it.
We thought it was the easiest and clearest thing to do to get money into all working people's pockets quickly and make sure that the recovery was sustainable. I don't think that a full payroll tax holiday is very much part of the conversation right now. The partial was put in the agreement that you all passed in December, and I believe it's helping. That people are getting a little more in their paycheck and they're spending a little more. That's good.
Okay. A number of times in your...
Sure, could I...
Sure.
And I don't mean to take time away from him, Mr. Chairman, with this comment. I really believe that what I'm doing is trying to build in more and more of you each time I talk to you the idea that Democrats and Republicans have to decide that the next election is not as important as having an America for the next election. And so they would agree to join hands and solve an American debt problem and take it out from the partisanship of the day. If senators and congressmen could sign that kind of pledge, we'd be on our way. If they really didn't care enough about getting elected, if they didn't care about getting reelected and cared more about saving the country, we'd have a shot at this. We think our package in the new tax that we added, you could ask the question, isn't that just an easy tax to put in there forever and even be raised? I remind you, we have not waived the filibuster rule. It's still hard to pass a new tax in the United States Senate, regardless of which one it is. And therefore, we think our holiday and our new tax, adopted with the entitlement reforms that are big, would save the country. And actually, with the tax reform, it would be more progressive than the tax code we have today. More progressive in terms of the rich and the poor and who's taxed and quadrennials and all that stuff. It would be better than what we got today, this new one.
Mr. Chair, can I just ask one more question?
Yeah, sure.
Senator Domenici just hit on progressivity, and I wanted to ask that question. In 2008, according to the Tax Foundation, the top 1% paid 38% of the total income tax, the top 5% almost 60%, the top 50% paid 97% of all income tax. Isn't one of our problems in terms of generating revenue, and again, I like to generate revenue the old-fashioned way by growing the economy. Isn't one of our problems that we've actually narrowed the tax base? And I think one of the things you're trying to do with the national sales tax is actually broaden that. So I guess I'm a little confused as to why a number of times during your report you're taking credit or, you know, enjoying the fact that you're increasing progressivity. I don't see that as a positive.
Alice, you want to do that?
I do believe in a progressive income tax, and but I agree that we need a broad-based consumption tax as well. That's why we put both in. The way we reform the income tax is to broaden the base of the income tax,
right,
and lower the rates. Now, many liberals are allergic to that because it sounds like lowering the rates is going to let rich people off easily, but actually it doesn't, and that's the reason we emphasize this. When you get rid of many of the the loopholes, the exclusions and deductions, those are taken advantage of mainly by upper income people. So that the way we reform the tax code makes it, preserves the progressivity of the income tax in order to offset the regressivity of the consumption tax. And I think that's the right way to do it.
Might I say, Senator, I told you when I shook your hand up there that I had listened to you of late and that I was very proud of what you had to say. And I think that don't let the cumbersome nature of this job get you down. Just remember the big picture. That's what we were elected for. And you have a good kind of a good feel for what the big picture is, but the institution will keep you from using it. You've got to find ways to use it. Excuse me for talking too much, but you can't do anything to me at this point.